What's up, guys? Today we have an economic doomsday reaction video. Let's get it.
We finally got the shocking interview. Jeffrey Gundlach, he's the billionaire founder of Double Line Capital, and he sat down with Yahoo News where he made some stunning predictions regarding the future of this country and economy. The interview is over 30 minutes long, but in today's video, we're just going to focus on a couple of specific clips regarding the astonishing predictions Jeffrey is making. The big question on everyone's mind is specific to one thing. Where is this all going, and is a Great Depression coming to this country?
Just to let you guys know, this guy is considered the bond king. He's a multi-billionaire, super well respected. So what he has to say, we must pay attention to.
Before you call me out for clickbait, here is the king of bonds, billionaire investor, and one of the most respected names in finance saying the impossible. America is headed towards a dark place. But before we begin, I just want to newsletter.
Back on some of these things. I feel like the Taiwan-Chinese situation is getting near an end game. I think the U.S. dollar reserve currency situation is getting more near an end game. And that's really going to be the game changer. When I say the next bailout is going to be the one that is maybe breaks the camel's back, I think it'll take the dollar down.
So this is this is crazy. We touched on this in the last video, but every single time the Fed and the government bail out big banks, bail out Wall Street, bail out the U.S. economy, they have to pump out more dollars and do crazy amount of fiscal and monetary policy. And every time they do that, they weaken the dollar. And this time they literally created, trillions of dollars of liquidity into the market. So he's saying the next time this happens, which could be sooner than later, there could be the needle that cracks or breaks the camel's back. So I personally, as you guys know, I don't think the dollar is going to be doomed for next, at least 5 or 10 years. But this guy, again, he's a king of bonds. This is his game. This is what he makes a living from. This is how he made billions, following the dollar, following the interest rates. So what he has to say, definitely I'm going to pay attention to and see some of his arguments and also do some research. So let's get at it.
So it's in the next recession, I think, that we're going to see dollar weakness. And the dollar is very, very overvalued versus our twin deficits. One of my most trusted indicators is the direction of the dollar broadly versus the twin deficits as a percentage of GDP. There's a long lead time. It's a long-term thing. It doesn't work for a year. It's something that has like an 8-year cycle.
Okay, that may have not sounded shocking to a regular person, but what Jeffrey just said there is that in the next recession, when bailouts happen again, just as they did in 2007, the dollar is done. If you were not aware, the US dollar is the reserve currency of the world. Without getting into the details, this means that the United States and its citizens enjoy many economic privileges that other countries could only dream of.
Look at this, guys. This is an awesome chart. This shows the world reserve currency over time in the past, 600 years. And if you look, going all the way back from Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, blah blah blah, every single reserve currency has lasted about 100 years. So we're about due for a change if history repeats itself. The thing about it is this. You see here, there's clear delineation between which country there's a new country that becomes the world reserve currency. But what about now? What country can compete with the dollar? What country can compete economically that other countries trust enough? Is not going to be China. Who the hell wants the RMB, the freaking Chinese yuan, to be the world reserve currency? There's possibly something in Europe, but right now, unless we have another country that steps up, or if there's a basket of countries that steps up, the US dollar is still the preeminent currency and the world reserve currency for the foreseeable future.
Historically, once a country loses its status as the worldwide reserve, it's the final nail in the coffin, the end of an empire. This process of slow decay has already started for the dollar. To understand this, you have to understand the relationship between interest rates and inflation. In our country, we have seen this relationship disintegrate, putting our powerful dollar at risk. You see, when times get tough, the Fed lowers rates to promote economic activity. It's their job to keep this delicate balance. Lower the rates too far and you'll overheat the economy. Raise the rates too much and you'll end up with a recession. So how does all of this relate to the downfall of the dollar? Well, the story starts way back in the 1980s when the US faced a massive inflation crisis. Paul Volcker and Ronald Reagan solved it by raising interest rates. Specifically, they raised the rate to a crazy 18%.
I was
This put a
there.
massive strain on businesses, but it ultimately fixed the problem with the decaying US dollar. Eventually, the Federal Reserve began to lower these rates once they realized inflation was disappearing. With each subsequent year of progress, the rate fell and fell until it reached 6% in the mid-80s. At this point, the Fed decided to up the rates once again, giving them more breathing room in the future if times got bad and they needed to cut rates to spur economic progress. But remember, back then, raising the rate to give more breathing room was done at 6%, which was a low number back then. They did this until about 1989. That year, the rate got to 10%, and the economy began to sputter. Soon the US entered a recession. Once again, to fix this, the Fed lowered the rate just as they would in any other recession, and the economy went back to normal. But this process of lowering interest rates and then raising them after recovery revealed a massive flaw with our system. Each time the Fed completed this process, the limit of how high they could push interest rates before the economy sputtered grew lower and lower. By the time 2018 came around, we saw that even when the Fed raised the rate to a mere 1.8%, the economy gave up and the stock market collapsed.
So this is absolutely true. Right now, our economy and our markets are so hypersensitive to interest rates. So if the Fed raises interest rates, which they're gonna do, even by freaking just a couple percentage, look at it. They're talking about raising it the interest rate three or maybe four times in a year. Every single time they raise it, they're probably going to raise it just by quarter percent, which is 25 basis points. So the market, before the little run up right now, it got slammed. Even for a potential 1 year out or another 1 year out, interest rates are going up by 1%, maybe a little bit more, 1.5%, and the whole market starts to crash. So this has me spooked, and others who follow the market should be spooked as well, because the Fed must raise interest rates in order for the inflation to start, to control inflation. If they don't, this is exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be runaway inflation, which will tumble the US dollar, potentially collapsing it and losing world reserve currency status, which is going to bring a host of nightmare situations for the U.S. economy. So right now, everyone says the Fed is in a really between a rock and a hard place, and it's absolutely true. So let's see what's next.
This is the real reason why we have 0% interest, and it's why the Fed simply can't afford to raise the rate even a little bit. We saw earlier this week that even when they just mentioned that they plan on raising the rate to 0.75% this year, the entire market took a massive L. This is also why multiple experts say that the Fed is stuck. It can't raise the rate without creating a massive recession, but by sitting idle, they watch inflation destroy the dollar.
Don't raise interest rates, then inflation will go up. If they do raise interest rates, then the economy is going to crash. But the economy will crash sooner or later if inflation is left to go buck wild. Then the market is going to crash, and again, it's going to create a whole host of ripple effects, if not tsunami effects, on the U.S. economy for your future and mine. So I predict the interest rates, they must increase interest rates and must crash the system, slow it down for inflation to come down, because they do not want to lose world reserve status. Right now, the US dollars, people don't know, and I said this before, US dollars are like bullets in this economic world war that we're having, okay? Competing against everyone else, specifically China. If the dollar starts to go down, starts to collapse, then China will potentially step in there, and like it or not, they could be the next dominant currency and next dominant economic force.
The official inflation report reveals a 6.8% decay in the dollar. The real number felt by people is likely much, much worse, because the government has manipulated the stats for years in their favor.
True.
This isn't some conspiracy theory, it's a fact accepted even by prominent hedge fund managers. Take a listen to Jeffrey explain this massive issue that continues to break down society. But before we get into his comment on the covers for on business or clickbait, thumb down. Just last week, cannot recommend markets that they love the daily upstation. Always unsubscribe. Now let's get back to Jeffrey's comments.
And inflation is going to continue to go up, at least in the next couple of months.
Where do you see inflation this year?
Well,
CPI.
okay. We have to look at different measures of CPI. CPI is at 6.8 right now, year over year. The one that's rolling off for last December is 0.2. So the way things are going, it seems pretty likely that we're going to get a 7 handle on the CPI soon. But the CPI, of course, is a strange construct. It's not calculated the same way as European CPI. If you use the European CPI methodology, our CPI right now would be at 7.8.
Damn.
So it's calculated a little bit differently. Also, there's this strange thing about shelter that's almost a third of our CPI. And shelter includes largely something called owner's equivalent rent. And owner's equivalent rent is not a real thing. It's not like you're going out there and measuring rents. What you're doing is asking people that don't rent out their house, if you did rent out your house, what do you think you'd rent it out for versus last year? As if a regular homeowner that doesn't rent out their house has any idea. I probably couldn't estimate what I could rent my property out for within 20%. I have no idea. I've never looked at it.
So there's your main problem with all of
It's a known fact that the Fed and our government are fudging the numbers. Maybe fudging is a little bit harsh, but not including all the pertinent data in that inflation. So right now inflation is like 8%, which is freaking insane because it hasn't been like this for like 40 years. But if we include like energy and housing costs, because everyone has to live somewhere, then we're talking about potentially doubling that, which is absolutely insane. So this is something to definitely look out for. I've seen prices go up in real estate and also in rent. So this is true. You know, people are feeling it. And man, anyone with the half a brain who goes out shopping could feel the impact of inflation happening right now. The whole thing about it is it transitory? And right now, that argument from the Fed seems less and less likely. And I'm going now, finally, after all this long period of time, I'm getting into the camp of more persistent inflation to come.
of this. We measure inflation by trusting the government sources to provide us with the data. Most of the time, nobody cares about inflation, but when it gets bad enough and people feel their paychecks becoming worth less and less, they start to get angry. Imagine
It is a theft. You have money, your money is getting stolen by inflation, okay? When inflation happens, your money is worth less and less and less. You could buy less and less and less. It's harder to survive. Absolutely true.
skilled inspector who made $25 an hour in the Midwest. This was once a respected salary, but when the Taco Bell worker down the road is offered 18, your mind begins to boil. The natural human instincts of jealousy, injustice, and selfishness kick in. Now add in the fact that your rent is shooting up, the price of food is skyrocketing, and you have a recipe for disaster. Slowly, your paycheck buys you less and less, and the government is telling you that housing is only up 3%. An absurd estimation, given the fact that by most other accounts, rents are up over 21% this year alone. In all cases throughout history, the government makes many attempts to downplay the facts on the ground when it comes to the collapse of their currency. 2 years ago, anyone who mentioned that the US may experience hyperinflation would quickly get labeled as a conspiracy theorist.
True.
Now, with each passing day, we are seeing that these Michael Berry tweets are getting closer and closer to reality. The government can spew whatever nonsense it wants regarding the cost of goods, but you can't stop the people from feeling their paychecks erode away at an unprecedented pace. If you understand inflation psychology, you know that it's a dangerous state of mind that leads to consumers spending more quickly than they otherwise would in the belief that prices are rising. In the past, this psychology took much longer to develop among the masses, but today, with the presence of social media, cell phones, and a 24/7 news cycle, many experts theorize that this will move much faster in the 21st century. Essentially, they believe that hyperinflation is much easier to achieve in the era of social media.
Another thing, social media, I'll say if hyperinflation, not even hyperinflation, if runaway inflation starts happening, people start taking their money out of the bank and start spending it, okay? Start spending, which will cause even more inflation. If people start taking money out of the bank, guess what's going to happen? Bank runs. If bank runs happen, game over, okay? Because of social media and because of the fractional reserve system, banks only have a fraction of their total deposits. So if people go in there and they cannot find their money or they won't be given their money, all hell's gonna break loose. And because social media is so prevalent, if it happens with one bank, people get freaked out. Then everyone will go out and start getting their cash from the banks, and then it's gonna be a stampede. It's gonna be crazy.
Whatever the case may be, we can easily conclude that Jeffrey's comments are very concerning. It's sad to hear a prominent hedge fund manager state that he believes the dollar will collapse in the next bailout. As always, thank you guys for watching.
So yeah, this gentleman again, he's called a king, bond king, and a lot of things I still don't agree with yet. Specifically, the downfall of the U.S. As the preeminent economy in the world, country in the world. That's still I still don't see that, and that also dovetail with the dollar. I do not see a competitor for the U.S. dollar hegemony anytime soon, but who knows? Right now, I, for a fact, will start preparing more and more for inflation and potential hyperinflation. So what are you doing? So in future videos, if you guys want, let me know in the comments. I want to talk about what steps we could do to protect our money right now and going forward. Okay? I love you guys. Take care. Put it in the comments. Thumbs up. Love you guys. See you later.